This shouldn't be a long video, but I want to make it really, really clear. So I'm sure Gary Johnsen is overall a much more decent person than any candidate who's actually been on the stage of the debates anytime in recent history. But that is not the point of the fact that Gary Johnsen is nearing a primetime slot in the debates coming up. This is all about engineering the improbable and yet inevitable win of Hillary Clinton. When was the last time a third-party candidate was in the debates that's usually held by only the two-party candidates? The answer, 1992, with Ross Perot. And while I have much more in common with Ross Perot than Bush or Clinton, and think he was probably a more decent guy, the fact of the matter is, at the end of the day, he was a spoiler who probably got Bill Clinton elected over George H.W. Bush. And now, 24 years later, Gary Johnsen, whatever else he might represent, is quite possibly going to be the secret weapon of Hillary Clinton to become elected, or rather selected.
Hillary Clinton, a wonderful public servant, I guess I would say that.
When she's hated by a vast majority of this country. This is nothing against Gary Johnsen. We don't even need to get into the issues or the positions of these different candidates. This is strictly just electioneering. And it's worth keeping in mind that his running mate, the establishment tool William Weld, who was put on the Libertarian ticket despite not having solid credentials, basically because he can raise money, was actually once friends and co-workers with Hillary Clinton way back in the Watergate days when they were going after Nixon.
Old friend, nice kid, knew her in her 20s. We shared an office on the Nixon impeachment. Real bond, lifelong. Seriously, not kidding.
William Weld has like 40 years of history with Hillary Clinton and has even been featured in fan fiction as a secret lover of her. And hey, maybe that's the ultimate hidden handshake behind the scenes, because what we're seeing right now is just horrifying. Not only that, but William Weld is the chairman of the Council on Foreign Relations Special Report on Building a North American Community. So you've got Trump, who wants to build a wall and halt immigration, going up against not only Hillary, but a libertarian vice president who actually has authored the secret report to merge Canada and Mexico with the United States. Now, there's lots of hate for Trump, there's lots of hate for Hillary, there's lots of people who are fed up with both parties, and again, that's all great, I'm there with you, I hate those parties too. But Gary Johnsen is approaching the arbitrarily set 15% poll number that he needs to qualify to join the presidential debate. Newsweek is reporting it, New York Times, other mainstream places, they're reporting that Gary Johnsen, who frankly could put children hyped up on Kool-Aid and Twinkies to sleep, okay? Guys, he's a living suit of paint drying on the wall, even though he has some good positions and a good track record. I'm sorry, but Gary Johnsen is going to be in the presidential debates. Obviously has no chance of winning, even though I'm sure he'd be better than either of those candidates. The fact of the matter is, his presence in this race is all about being a spoiler. He will siphon conservative votes, GOP votes, Republicans who don't like Trump, outsiders who just want to vote for someone who's not in both parties, and it may prove in hindsight to be the ultimate factor that allowed Hillary to enter the White House and Trump to just be an entertaining asterisk in history. Just, if you set aside your views on these people and look at the electioneering numbers, you're going to see the pure dread and the inevitable doom that is coming.
Hi, Dr. Stein. Thanks for joining me.
It's great to be with you.
So if Bernie Sanders concedes at the Democratic Convention, if he does that, then it's time for everyone who's even remotely left-wing to just rally behind Hillary, right? That's what everyone should do next, is support Goldman Sachs' darling, correct?
Yes. You know, if we want a world of predatory banks and fossil fuel giants and war profiteers, you know, Hillary has been cheerleading for them throughout her career in very clear and specific ways. So if you like being thrown under the bus, if you like teetering on the brink of the next economic meltdown, if you like the climate catastrophe, which is coming closer by the day, you know, go ahead and vote for Hillary. On the other hand, if you recognize that, you know, the lesser evil hasn't done it for us. In fact, in many ways, this politics of fear delivered everything we were afraid of. All those reasons we were told to vote for the lesser evil. You know, you didn't want the massive bailouts for Wall Street and the offshoring of our jobs and the expansion of the war. That's exactly what we got. The politics of fear delivered everything we were afraid of. So, you know, in a nutshell, I'd say forget the lesser evil, fight for the greater good, like our lives depend on it, because they do.
Yeah, but I've heard that all women must support Hillary because this is historic, and any men who don't support Hillary are sexist. Is that not true?
Well, I've been waiting to be accused of being sexist myself for not supporting Hillary. And, you know, I'd say the agenda of feminism, the agenda for women, is not Hillary's agenda. Hillary may support some specifics like, you know, child care and equal wages. However, child care without a job, you know, it doesn't do you a whole lot of good to have child care if you don't have a job. And equal wages that are equal in poverty is not adequate. We need a real agenda of justice that Hillary Clinton has not supported. Hillary, you know, led the charge to dismantle the social safety net, welfare as we know it, aid to families with dependent children. Hillary led the charge to dismantle that and left us with a shell of a safety net with millions more children in poverty. Hillary led the charge to actually reduce the minimum wage in poverty-stricken Haiti, where the wage had been raised up to, you know, a miserable 60 cents. Hillary led the charge to push it back down to 40 cents. So this is not how we move forward for women. Fortunately, in this race, you don't have to be a corporatist, a militarist, or an imperialist in order to be a feminist. You have another choice, and you're looking at her.
Good points, although you brought up childcare, and I think they would argue that, you know, without childcare, then you get those 3- and 4-year-olds to work at a young age, and that's really important for the economy. But I want to pivot to the election fraud that seems to have gone down in this primary. I mean, there's buckets of evidence that there was massive voter suppression. The polling places were cut drastically. Exit polls don't match up. The voter rolls were purged. It goes on and on. What are your thoughts about this mayhem? You know, did we in any way get a genuine primary election?
Absolutely not. And the biggest outrage of all, I think, is California, where there are 2 million uncounted votes. Hello. And the result of the election is very much opposed to what the polls had been showing, which was that it was going to be, you know, really, really close. Hillary emerged with a big lead of 500,000 votes nearly, yet there were 2 million uncounted votes. What I don't understand is why in the world is Senator Sanders not calling for a Department of Justice investigation of California and the many other areas, but especially California, to have sort of the election hinging on the California results and this sort of you know, the final blow being delivered to the Sanders campaign based on the California loss. I don't understand why somebody's butt is not being hauled into court over election fraud in California and in many other many other states around the country.
Yeah, well, it's good to hear you would fight harder if you were in that situation. If the establishment, though, was willing to execute so much voter suppression and other shenanigans of many kind that went down against Bernie Sanders, what makes you think they wouldn't just do the same, if your numbers start getting threatening enough to them? If we don't have fair elections, do you feel you could still have an impact?
Absolutely, because we're not going to take it sitting down. As we build a movement to insert democracy into this scam of an election where the majority of voters disapprove of the two leading candidates and distrust them at record values, at record levels. And a majority are calling for independent voices different from the two candidates. We have a real head of steam here. And in fact, the majority of Clinton supporters don't actually support Clinton. They just oppose Trump. And the majority of Trump supporters don't support him either. They just oppose Clinton. So there's an enormous momentum here to organize real change. That was feeding into Bernie's campaign. And unfortunately, the Democrats have sabotaged him like they have sabotaged every other principled Democratic campaign for the past many decades. This has proven that you can't have a revolutionary campaign in a counter-revolutionary party. We are going to build that revolutionary momentum, and we are going to fight all the way. If we are suppressed at the polls, you can bet we will not only be calling for Department of Justice investigations, but we will be out demonstrating like they have never seen.
So the revolutionary spirit does not have to end with Bernie Sanders. I mentioned voter suppression, which a lot of people talk about, but you don't hear much talk of candidate suppression. You were arrested last time you tried to attend the presidential debates, even though you were a presidential candidate. Do you plan to spend this year's debates in a jail cell as well?
If I am, I think I will be in very good company with many thousands of Americans who are not going to go quietly into this dark night. And I must say, many people out there, including some fairly conventional media, are actually beginning to call for open debates, which include Gary Johnsen and myself, so that, you know, voters not only have a right to vote, voters have a right to know who they can vote for. And if a simple common sense rule was applied, and that rule is if the candidate is on enough ballots that the candidate can numerically win the election, and we're already on a majority of ballots, then that candidate needs to be heard from by the American public. And the American public has a right to know about who their realistic choices are. So get ready, go to my website, jill2016.com, and sign up on the Open Debates campaign, which you will see on the website, because we are going to start early and often. What we left till the very end in 2012, we will be beginning fairly soon. So expect action, hold on to your hat, and let's insist that we democratize these debates, which the League of Women Voters called a fraud being perpetrated on the American public. We need to open up those debates as a gateway to establishing the real democracy that we need if we are going to get out of here alive. And I don't just mean this century, I mean in the next few decades. We got some serious stuff ahead. This is really kind of an existential moment like we haven't seen before. Look at climate, look at war, look at nuclear weapons. We need a different way forward because the Democrats are doing the same thing. They are leading the charge on all of those issues over the cliff. So I'd say forget that lesser evil, stand up and fight for the greater good.
Do you think we are witnessing the end of the two-party paradigm, the two-party stranglehold?
We absolutely are. I mean, if you look at the numbers, people have rejected the Democratic and Republican parties on a whole variety of polls and are clamoring for something else. And I would just add that it is the stroke of a pen. In the blink of an eye, we can reform the election system to take the fear out of voting. If you can't put your values into your vote, democracy has no moral compass, and we are a ship lost in a storm way out at sea, which is exactly where we are. We need to remove the fear from voting, and we can do that by standing up with courage, which I suggest people do. But in addition, we can also, for those who quite don't have the courage yet, we can simply create a ranked choice voting system that lets you rank your choices. So your first choice can be the underdog that you support. And if your first choice loses, your vote is automatically reassigned to your second choice. We can pass that right now in every state legislature. We can pass it in Congress. We can eliminate any risk of an unexpected and unintended result in the election to liberate you, to liberate all of us, to actually bring our values back to our democracy and guide our way forward. If we have a moral vacuum, that will be filled by corporate America, which is only too happy to keep preying upon us and putting profit over people, planet, and peace. We got to turn it around so it's people, planet, and peace over profit, and we can do that by liberating our voting system. And can I mention one other thing real quickly?
Yes, you can. Please go ahead. And also let people know, again, how to find out more about your platform and everything.
Great. We are told to think of ourselves as powerless and as just a footnote in this election. And therefore, why bother? Why bother standing up? And what I would say is, remember, there are 43 million young people and not so young people now who are locked in student loan debt. 43 million is enough to win the election right there, hands down. 43 million will win a three-way presidential race. There's only one place to put those votes. I'm the only candidate who will cancel student debt as my first act in taking office. The president has executive authority over this by appointing the chair of the Federal Reserve, who can do the magic trick called quantitative easing that cancels student debt. We did it for the crooks on Wall Street. It's about time to do it for the students. Get that word out to all your friends, all your family members who are in debt, because it's a whole generation that's trapped. We need to liberate that generation for their benefit and for ours. So get the word out. That's how we can realistically get to critical mass to be able to turn that White House into a greenhouse in this election, and the world will be a better place for it.
Thank you.
Find out more, go to Jill2016.com or join us on social media at Dr. Jill Stein, and that's Dr. No period Jill Stein. Join the team.
Thank you so much. And yes, I have noticed you're blowing up social media recently. But thank you so much for joining us.
Great to be with you. All the best.